We will, in this 9 to noon time, have time to get oriented to the curriculum and the process and the revision, experience it as an instructor, experience it as a participant, then take some time to reflect on it together and ask questions. Which is, I want you to not ask your question right at this minute, but I want you to have one question written down. So you're listening to see, was my question answered while we were moving through things this morning. This afternoon, we'll experience one more learning experience. Some of you will leave with feedback to go have as part of your coaching training, and those who are staying here with us, we'll be having a World Cafe around coaching, around serving the caregivers to serve. At the end of the day, I'm going to walk you through a time for your infant toddler specialist qualification in PBIS, with the expectation that almost all of you do it by the end of this week. My shared commitment in that is I will be spending Thanksgiving to New Year's reviewing and scoring college other professional credentials. Don't call me during that time, I'll be busy. But a couple of questions about because I know it's a high level of stress for a lot of people that you're serving. To earn the tax credit, you must have any professional credential any day during this year. So the tax year goes from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. So anyone who had a credential, including an ECPC 2.0 from the old PBIS, say it expired today, you had a credential this year. That will be on the list that goes to the Department of Revenue. The other thing that someone has to have, this doesn't apply to almost any of you, is have worked in an early care and educational license program for at least 6 years. That's information that comes from the program paying taxes. That information goes to the Department of Revenue. So the professional credential is you have to have any credential for at least 1 day during the year, which is why us in the department will be scoring credentials until December 31st, because everybody we get scored on December 31st is that list. So we are prioritizing ones that have no credentials for. Those are getting scored first, and then those who seem to be looking to boost the level, and then those who have an expired one, and then those who have one that's an old credential that's current, to maximize the total number of people and credential during the year. Several people asked me that question yesterday, so I wanted to today. Now we're going to move into EQIT for the rest of the day. So here that we're going to talk about, again, if you have questions in these areas, write them down, listen for them, and see if we can answer them. Why did we do this? We'll answer that question. What the heck is it all about? For me, as infant toddler specialist, to use this material. We will practice. We will see some new tools that are built into the curriculum that you don't have. You experience experiences. More you're going to experience what babies know and how they learn more. For knowledge, responsive caregiving, and statistical thinking. That's a mouthful. A lot of learning experiences have a mouthful of a name now, but not all of them have actually changed very much. So that's our agenda for this morning. We're going to start here with why did we do this? So why did we do this? These are the goals that the EQ initiative has for professional development. Eva and I built these, wrote these, we came into these roles, the leadership of the initiative. What I have highlighted here is that you all, as infant toddler specialists, responsibly implement evidence-based training and coaching for infant toddler educators in your community. So that means, yes, EQIT, yes, other training that we can set back strength space and focus on infants and toddlers, we would be happy to fund you to do it or encourage you to do it on your own. That means coaching that is evidence-based, strength-based, we'd be happy to fund it and have to do it on your own. That's why we get you certified as an a specialist trainer and a specialist coach. But the strategy that we want to highlight here, the strategy that we're going to highlight here is we're going to ensure, particularly the evidence-based implementation course and coaching. We wrote this as our strategy in about 2018, 2019 at the Colorado Got a Preschool Development Grant. And we said, we want to revise the curriculum and supporting materials. We realize this is the we talked about. This is a bridge strategy. This is one of the short-term strategies for a lot of the. So while we have a big bucket of money, we're going to use it to revise the curriculum, the whole thing at once, because we have been attempting to do one module at a time. It's not consistent across the whole curriculum. Each module, we learned a lot in each process, but we changed what we were doing. And I know it felt easier to do one module at a time, learn only one new thing. But once you learn all the new things of the structure of the updated curriculum, you don't have to do it again. We promise at least 5 years. So that's one of the reasons why is that the money came out. I'm going to walk back to my notes and make sure I know things. So a couple of things that we wanted to make sure we were highlighting in the revision. One, research has changed. From a high level, infants and toddlers need responsive care. There's literally no research that counteracts that. In their families, babies need to serve and they need to have it returned. Not perfectly, not all of the time, but consistently. That research is as solid as literally anything. However, lots of things do change. We can look into these brains with fMRIs, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and we can see and learn more. We've all been learning more about how our autonomic nervous system responds to stress in the last years. We know a lot more now, and we wanted to make sure that what you have as an infant toddler specialist is as up to date as it can. And that's that foundation. We call it the background foundation of each module. So that was one thing we wanted to do, update research. We wanted to incorporate our best understanding of trauma. That's been a burgeoning topic. We understand more about it. So we've got a whole module now. Ostensibly focused on trauma, but it's called responsiveness and resilience. We're working with all children. All children need the things, actually all the kids need the things that help us with our resilience, because we're all going to have trauma. So that's an update to module 15 to shift from a little bit focus on science. I know it's hard to let go of and look at more about social development, because we just know a lot more. So not a word strength. You'll see a little bit now. Play and toys and materials and parallel things, because all of the humans need to play to grow. We wanted to simplify it, and this was a hard decision. I think it's something that Joe never, she and I argued about this actually for years. We have to let go of the relate booklets because it's too much work for us as a state to live. I hear that sound out here. It's too, in the early 2000s, we did 100 things per participant each council. That to be our job means that we can really only have the 2 activities delivered. Right, because we have to have the channel, we have to have a lot of relationships. We need to make it simple and deep enough that it could be affordable. So that for example, Stacey Sabat talked about the spring that was funded by Mile Higher Learning. It was the curriculum is affordable enough. Qualified infant toddler specialists can deliver it outside the council, and it's not. 10 years ago, that Mile Higher of other stuff happen. So one of our intentions is to simplify how to make the course affordable, so that you all, infant toddler specialists, can teach it wherever you want, as long as you're approved with us and the schedule is approved. And the support materials. So this book, I hope many of you don't have it, a few handouts I think it's much, much, much thinner than the handout we're receiving in the past. So that was really hard thing to do, and it's going to make the course more affordable and people more likely to go back to look at these things. Right? How many of us have a beautiful book on our shelf that's literally right? Beautiful, beautiful book. Even Deb Curtis' beautiful book, right? Beautiful, beautiful. But if it's so simple and small and interactive with it, I might go back to it. Or I might be able to go back to my coach college. If there's something in your EQIT responsive journey handbook that you want to go back to, we might be able to go back to it in small book later. We wanted to reinforce some stuff investments of delivering development guidelines. That's the next place where we can continue to grow that respect, that of respect and escalate. Remember, respect is knowing about child development and completely sensitively observing. There's what we expect and then what we actually see is that respect piece of that process. We wanted to structure the curriculum a little bit to do more autonomy. Not everybody has liked that so far. But I think you're going to understand this one. And because it's a parallel process of what we want educators, we don't want them coming to EQIT and being told what to do, right? I'm not there in that classroom with those videos. I don't know what to do. You want to be saying educators just like we want the educators to be saying, not saying, well, it's your 9-month birthday. I think you need to be crossing the midline with your Instagram. Instead, we're going to be saying and providing opportunities. So there's some things that have changed about the layout. What might say that makes you do more work, or might say give you autonomy to say, what am I going to bring to this piece of the curriculum today? I just want to really highlight, it is not because the old curriculum was bad, or even really out of date. Nothing in it is bad at all. For your self-regulation to take your curriculum and put it in to your new curriculum, find your habit there, your notes in the mind. Do that. If you become dysregulated doing a module and can't teach a new learning experience, but remember the old one, that's okay. Do that. So we would be happy to have you doing that. So what hasn't changed? And actually, what has hopefully reinforced is Eva, Lorraine, and Sandy and I, through this process, wrote up a little article that was published this summer that basically, if it's all taught, that would be enough. And so we wanted the curriculum to be that. Wanted it to reinforce that. Because much like that autonomy we want to develop at every level, as we see things change, there's things that come and go. It might be fast. They might be things that teachers think about infants and toddlers, but we can be sure if we slow down and observe, respect what we see, whether we're working with an adult or working with a baby or working with a family, pause even for 1 second to wonder, which is us into kind of stand aside, judging, and we choose a contingent response, again, either with an adult or with a baby, we're probably not doing harm. Probably not. I brought the trauma back in. We all attempt our best to not do harm, but we all do. We in our relationship mistakes that repair of that cycle that moves us forward in our relationship. That hasn't changed. So how did we do it? We hired Sandy Peterson, who wrote the original curriculum to revise the curriculum. And so she did that expert review and she wrote all of the foundations for each module. And that's 2. Those of us who've been teaching for a long time, like, I should just be able to teach stuff and teach. I know this stuff. You do. And there's new stuff, new words. That's what we always do. The foundation every time before you teach, because you're going to draw something out. You're going to remember, make a connection with somebody who's in this class who needs that little bit of information. We're going to underline and highlight. I hope I have enough underliners and highlights in your back to the tables today. everybody who was trying to help and participate. We would have been doing, we would have done this meeting 2 years ago. We would have sat together, we would have time. So I'm going to ask you to forgive me because I have features that don't work for you, because I've made the best decision that I could when I could make it on the timeline of the designer, which is the best we could really do. And a lot of that layout and design is not done yet. So one of the questions some of you might have written down is, when will I get my final manual already? How many of you received module 1 before shrink that with the task? I have a few extra if you don't have them. That's as much as we have designed and finalized. I'm expecting module 8 this week, and that will give us modules 5 through 8 designed and finalized. I get all 8 of them. I mean, all 4 of those, and we'll have them ready. They shrink wrap with their tabs, so they can find their 9 through 16 are in a different format. They look like this. How many of you received this from your council? We've got parts of this today. I didn't mail this draft to people who are not teaching this fall. Because by the time you teach, I have 9 through 16 beautifully laid out with all its design features. But what this gives us is an opportunity to do what we would have done had we not been able to pandemic. To give me feedback. I urged you X, Y, and Z, and then we did for modules 9 through 16 and 27. So that's how this happens. And here's what does QIT look like now? Well, it looks exactly the same. You are going to use central themes and agenda. We built that in a little bit more explicitly. That's going to be supportive for our new instructors, but not necessarily critical. You're going to already be handling central themes and agenda module like you always have. For those of you who taught for a long time, we're going to replicate the learning experiences as they were written responsibly in your community in a way that works. One of the things that we did, this was really hard, was work to make no more than 4 main learning experiences in every module. That means 10, 11, 13, 6, 5, and 6 are radically different because there's less there. So we're going to have to take a deep breath and not go fast. It will be okay. And people will get what they need. And it's important to remember that there's other partners with those things. You will keep team teaching within the modules because we're focusing on that trauma, understanding relationships. Sometimes one of you needs to facilitate the class, or someone else facilitates the re-regulation of one of your participants, or more of them. This is hard work. It's always hard work to work with. You are going to use the Relate Reflection tool every module. We made that more clear and explicit, but again, with more space, clear and explicit space for your autonomy. This is this interesting parallel. The curriculum was written in 99 and finalized a couple of years later. And the Relate Reflection tool came later. So you'll see your old curriculum where it'll just say, refer to the Relate Reflection, which sometimes when there were 14 learning experiences in a module, you just said, oh, don't forget your Relate Reflection. As people walk through the door, we really want that process of respect, reflect, relate happen multiple times in the module so that caregivers can go feel comfortable doing it in the moment and over time with children. And then you'll have regular course evaluations, which doesn't mean every module, but we still want you to be getting some data back from your participants and modifying and adapting. Even as you replicate as written, you're making adjustments. There's some modules that are a little heavy on small group work. There's some modules that are heavy on craft materials. And if you have a group that's like, oh my God, we're craft materials already, then maybe make an adjustment. Maybe you modify one. Maybe you do something a little different. Those are up to you. How am I going to modify based on this one the last time? I'll keep sending this out. We're trying to collect all your critical feedback. It doesn't be like typos, but also any feedback on spelling errors, layout problems, anything in one place. This QR code, I'm going to show it times today. To see something, say something code. It'll take you to a Smartsheet form. It's all optional questions. So if you just want to say, Put your email address in and say, I need to talk about module 7. That's the kind of feedback you can have. Just put it in one of the empty fields. Or on page 19, there's a typo. You spelled responsiveness wrong yet again. It's the words we type all the time. Never know it right. I'll show that to you again and I'll send it out to you. So we'll get it again. So what the heck are these? First question. One of the things that we did was a little bit of design. Sandy and I argued about this quite a bit. But they don't need images. I said they need images. But I made the final design decision. So but I think that as we moved on, so this is respect, reflect, relate. And they're not perfect. But hopefully they give us that reminder that we're keeping and coming back to this. Respect. You look at the development of children, infants and toddlers. We recognize and anticipate development and we learn more by observing. That's why with that magnifying glass, zooming in, looking closely, reflect. Not just wonder. So with the brain cloud, it would be just reflection, but we reflect in the EQ initiative from a strict space perspective. So I'm not wonder what was motivating them. The last time we had our 17, I couldn't think about my toddler stuff. Part of our work together is being accountable to each other. To be strengths-based, which is hard work. Sometimes I tell people you can teach EQIT in 2 minutes. Just teach people to pause and watch the baby wonder, pause, and choose a continuous response. If it fast 48 hours on, it's not good. We have to practice. So I literally have I did that as my darling son. And relate. And we chose the breastfeeding image. I don't think it's perfect ideal. This is again, see something, say something. If these images don't work for you for respect and relate, in 5 years we're going to update. But they're working. Someone sent me a picture of a cake that was, I believe, a participant brought to the last session. So it's actually, for those of you who haven't taught yet, the participants are getting it. And I have to say, all visual images are how they learn and make sense of the world. And so these visual things might work for all of us, but they're working because they're working. So this is the cover. The responsive, we renamed the handout that keeps coming in the handout. We renamed the handout packet the Responsive Care Journey Handbook. That is what participants go on and toward responsive care. I have all 16 modules laid out in Spanish. We're going to be able to print this in Spanish. I feel concerned that there are more typos and missed culturally wrong things, so we're going to need you to use that to say something Spanish speakers and people who are providing Spanish materials. So the next thing is, what are all these other images that are coming across the top? So they're all in a row in the top of here, and for a long time, and you're going to pick up the one of the reflection tools back there. One of the big themes of the EQ initiative that you were talking about, there's sort of, you get nothing but respect, reflect, relate. That's a good start. And first, layer underneath big things we know about in childcare settings that these images are meant to remind us of. One of the things is you'll hear different numbers. But really, all the brain development happens in the first 3 years. It's very nice that people can learn to read and stuff after infancy, but they can't do it out responsive marriage. That they literally cannot attempt to learning unless they have enough, a lot, but enough interaction. The modules, we can see that icon in all of them, but they'll be highlighted. You're focusing. This one is highlighted in module 1 where we're really teaching about early brain development. We reuse this one as this sort of symbol of responsive care. The same idea of relational response. It's responsive care. It's a central and overarching theme of the entire curriculum. Again, that's the only thing someone walks away with. And care is responsive. There's something different about responsive than directive. That's enough if they got just that. The heart kind of reflects emotional and social development. So you'll see it highlighted in module 2, care of the spirit, and you'll see it highlighted again in module 15. Because again, the first 3 years are pivotal, critical. Repair can happen anytime across the lifespan. The competencies underlying the strength at the same time can also do a good job getting them right from the beginning. And our teachers are pivotal in the experience. That's one of those big things. It's development, social, physical learning, matters, and it happens in the first 3 years. Family, cultural responsiveness, and the centrality of family. Those are the people in the house. They were not doing chat yesterday. So behind this, there used to be a room, and the door popped open yesterday. I opened it, and the door is dug up to the dirt. I think for bigger. This is a really interesting one because often it's hard to coach on module 15. You don't see it quite the same, but it's really interesting and different for babies and toddlers across all other ages because they don't yet know they're part of their family. They couldn't say to you, oh, it feels really good in this setting because I smell the same smell of food cooking that I smell in my home. That you wrap me up the way that my mom wraps me up when it's time for you to rest. They can't tell us so that they can feel it. And there's dissonance when it feels different in care. It's because of that culture, this continuity is so critical for both for their lifelong identity and in the moment for their healthy experiences. They feel home and that their parents feel connected. There's a bi-directional connection, and that's always been for our commitment. Something unrelated to you. To give it a feedback that they really liked QIT because it's not a coach, it's I can't remember what it was, but it was like culturally open. My cultural practices with infants I wasn't told they were wrong. And we try, I don't think we're all the way there yet. I think there's a lot more practices in care. So I think that be more inclusive of, but I think it's one of the major commitments we need to help children feel connected to their life. Good practice. We basically slimmed this down to module 5. We have a lot of partners. I was talking to someone yesterday afternoon. She said, I was just studying and they're giving a really little baby. Trying to help them. I was like, wait a minute, that's your child your food program partner. You have partners that that's a licensing. You don't have to do all the things. QIT used to have a lot more. And we've been here for almost 25 years, and some of those projects and programs at licensing specialists you've been here for keeping it healthy. Now, people need a little bit more innovation. So there's a little bit less of this, but it's critical. You don't learn if you're not. Observation. The modules, the development of domain modules, you'll see this magnifying glass because that's such an overarching theme. We know, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, we know that caregivers know well, and they know baby well. The things we try to bring in, that knowing, self-knowing you have, stating development is not enough. Or this is, I know what the right next step is. I'm withholding the spoon from him so that he can reach out for it. I know it. That's in our early learning development guidelines too, and we want people to be doing both. Closely observing, but each module focuses on one part of development. We'll focus on what we now know a little bit more than we know about what babies' brains are doing as their cognitive development is exploding in the first 2 years. So all those modules are meant to practice recognizing and anticipating development through both observation and learning from more. And then inclusion, again, inclusion was a really hard thing to make, but we tried to put all these different kinds of babies. What's good for babies is good for babies. What is good care for all the babies is also the good, best care for babies with needs, whether they're special healthcare needs, that's your child care health consultant, nurse consultant is your partner for special healthcare needs, or general special needs. And oftentimes we don't have identified special needs for infants and toddlers, which makes it much more critical that we just include everyone and adapt to them. In talking with our early intervention partners this summer, they said, we're really going to work on helping people make referrals in the referrals. So there's not, just like there's not a number of investigators, there are not enough interventionists right now. Not enough money. So every contribution we make toward inclusion is a contribution that's getting children, helping children stay on track in these difficult. So where do these things show up? So you'll see this strip. This is a pause right now. Everybody should have some copy of the Module 6 manual. So you either got a little stack today, or you have one to make. This is what the top of the cover looks. You'll see in Module 6 the little part. Goes up again. I said that wrong earlier. It's in Module 2, 6, and 15 that the hard comes up. But we're really talking about emotional development. And this is what the top of the cover page of the looks like. So you'll see that one icon highlighted. And again, if you get off track in the module, social emotional development, non-social emotional. I got it. That's what we're focusing on this module. Sophia is not here. When she teaches, she puts a big poster on the wall that says 0 to 3. And when people are like, when I get this 5-year-old, she's like, on topic. Policy applies to everybody, but we're here for the day. So we're off topic, but what about, we're not talking about that right now. Talking about their healthy social emotional development in Module 2 and in Module 6 and Module 15. Those are good questions for you to coach. Okay, you're going to see it again. This is a quick snapshot from the first page of the foundation. Yeah, I think that's the first page of the foundations of Module 2. Yeah, no, I take that back. It's not the very first page. It's, for those of you that okay. Page 2. Page 1 is the first page. Page 2, the first page will show you that. Those of you who have just the sample little stack that you picked up in the back. This is this page 2 of Module 6. So you'll see a little strip across the top of all of your foundations. Remember, this is what module did. If you're all things fall out, you can maybe stack them back together because their strip is right. So see it again. This is the first page. Yes, this is the very first page of the foundation. So those of you who have a whole module 6, if you print it out, this is the very first page. You see the whole strip. The whole header, and the top of the header is the foundation. Very first thing in the again. You're going to see these steps throughout the program when you're getting used to this. See something, say something. If it doesn't make sense to you, let me know. Okay, you're going to, here's what I wanted to say. Each learning experience is just going to have that to remind you which one you're in. You should line up with your participants. They're going to see the same thing and have that part highlighted in their handout packet. This is the top of the link. Reflects the skills and agenda learning experiences in, actually it doesn't matter. All of the look like this, but say the same thing. These are the big ideas of this module. What are these things? These are the central themes, the learning goals, and the relate items. The participants see the central themes and the relate items in their handout, but you also have this target part of one of the middle. What's the big want people to take away from this module, from this learning experience rather? What is the learning goal? And that's the design features that we changed. In your old curriculum, you would see there were three, sometimes 6 central themes for a module, and then every learning experience had sometimes as many as 10 main points today. Nobody was learning from them. And then we felt bad if we only got one of those big ideas. So one of the design features is so learning, there are 3 big ideas for the module. There are 3 general overarching outcomes, learning goals for the module, and there are 2 related items for the module. They're pretty close to line, and see something, say something, at all tell us. But you're going to see that every module, and then at the top of each, that you're going to see it in a couple of places. The page of every module. And you're going to use this as your, that's all you're going to use. I know what to do. You'll see behind this, there's that part with the key. These are the big ideas that are in this module. There's the relate reflection from the bottom half of the page, the learning goals, and you'll see the agenda. Very quick list to get to the what's going to happen this month. And that is on the cover of the instructor manual. So if you have kind of that one up real quick, that looks like this. Every module has these, and now when you look on and you'll see every one of them, that single icon highlighted in the middle. You'll see that on every page. You'll see these again at the top of every learning. Try to lay these out in the manual. So they are start on they go 2 pages, they all start at the top of the page. The type of the learning experiences. For example, this afternoon we're going to look at the supportive relationship in my life experience. I can just put it regulated while I'm teaching how to that. I follow your early childhood program with responsive care teachers and build resilience. Oriented care. So that's a big idea that I'm going to come back to. I will look at this, the big idea we're going to do. They'll be able to name at least one form of resilience already present in their own lives. And so this is going to be a learning experience to get off track because trauma is endemic. And so bringing back to that's really big and look for one thing that everybody has. Without having read the directions, I can quickly look at it.
Oh, Grayson, don't push it all the way through. Pull the top tub out. Grayson, pull the top tub back through that way. The one that's up above you. Yeah, that one.
Here's some of your participants. You're able to say, oh yeah, I recommend this. But what you take away from the module helps them build relationships. We're doing a good job. You're gonna okay, so those are the main places that you're going to see those. We'll come back to them a little bit later, but those are the learning goals and the relate reflection. What are these things? I made some of these decisions when I was building responsive care journey handbook, the participant handout, and it took some of the decisions that have been for. But this are indicate to you, you might have to do things to get better this month. I need to go to the tools and cut something out. Okay. The clock says you might need to prepare ahead of time. And remember when I was saying building some more autonomy in here? You were going to think you might be thinking, okay, I can't just show up. Just show up. I'm going to have to prepare specifics. You have to think about a story highlighting. I have to just make sure that I have the materials on hand. I might have them, but I might have make sure I have something. The video. Hopefully, we have all the core videos embedded in the slide decks at this point. But this is a reminder to you, we have to make sure that my technology ready to go. This module. Be a slide deck to tell you there's this assembly related to election. There's relates on the slide. We have said a lot of times, if you can't do the slides, that's okay. The important thing is interaction that you're participants are having with each other in the relationship with you. And then this is meant to be that. And now it's to remind you, oh, I'm going to remember to call out to the participants that they're going to look at their handout pack. So where do we see? So this is the directions for, this is the directions for supportive relationships in my life. And we just need to pass this time here. It actually does call for a handout. This is where see something, say something, you forgot to mark the handout here. And this is one of the things that you'll see. So this is where modules 1 through 4 that you have in here look like they have boxes in them for you to write in your manual. Don't keep it pretty forever. But if you need to, you can just take notes and put them in there. If you really don't want to write it, okay. But this is to say, what's my resolution strategy? Some places the directions are kind of open-ended. It's that time of something ahead. I'm going to talk with my co-instructors. What should we do here? So when I'm thinking about this, what I was writing down, because I'm going to facilitate this for you this afternoon, I might write down, I'm going to walk people through walking around in their daytime, visually seeing some things that they know so they can imagine them before they write it down. So I might write to myself, and I know I used to do that, I'm going to write a date, and then I write a little note about how it went poorly. Next time, because right in that moment is the time that I have a better idea. Okay, here's an example of this is the experience. We saved this from the old model, the neglect topic, and it's in the trauma resilience module now. You'll see that there's slides, there are handouts. You have to prepare ahead of time because you're going to need this paper, chart paper, or facilitate virtually to modify that. Now, those things tell the clock or the scissors tell you to go to a different section in your module. So for everybody who picked up module 6, I want you to look for the page in that stack that has the scissors at the top of it. Okay, it's helping again. It looks like this, and it is page 28 in the stack. Every module has this page. This is the cover page to your teacher tools. So if in the learning experience it says scissors or a clock, go look at this page. This was really hard in the first couple modules. People are like, where are the, I don't know which teacher tools to use. What are those autonomy pieces? It's easier for you to put all your planning in one place. So at the top, there are checklists. These are serve two things. I put the things that I expected you were going to do, but I left you some open boxes. You get to teaching this module, you're like, I have this material handy to bring today, boxes of tissues, for example. I can put that in, you might need them. Preparation. This module in particular gives you which video are you going to use to talk about toxic stress? Stress video or the ACEs video? Choose which one. Choose what you're going to do, harder choices. Give you a real quick rundown of the get ready for the module. But it also has those central goals to remind yourself. I'm getting dysregulated. I don't know what to do. What am I focusing on here? That's right. And then at the very bottom, it's got real quick reminders. And this is a funny one because there's only one teacher tool and you don't actually use it in the module. But if there's teacher tools you're using in the module, like you're copying them. For example, module 8, you're copying those video cards. They'll say teacher tool number X, will copy 3 times. And then the teacher tools themselves will follow. And this one gives a little bit of extra instruction about materials. We wanted to take that extra instruction about materials out of the learning experience instructions so that when you're facilitating, you're not like, oh darn, I was supposed to do this ahead of time. Post it here. That's different. It's take them in. That's the bottom half of the page. Okay. I'm going to show you a couple of full-size pages and how these look now laid out and how they look in module 9, which you have with you right now as well. So when you orient to your module, when you open up your module, your cover page, I know you can read this from here, but if you have these hands, your cover page for a finalized module looks like this. This is how it looks in the draft module. Central themes, the learning goals, the relate reflections in the agenda. Central themes, learning goals, relate reflections in the agenda. So that's how they look right now. When you're looking at these draft modules, but I apologize, they're not laid out yet. They're going to get laid out like this. Okay. There is going to be a page in every module that is the overview of learning experiences. And so that overview of the learning experiences is again a quick orientation to the module, to what's happening in the module. I left this space here so you could, I imagined maybe you could laminate this page and use it as your working agenda each module. Sherry's going to do this one, Barb's going to do this one. Sherry, Barb, write your name in there, use it for notes. I don't know with it. If it doesn't work, so change it. It's got a quick rundown. A lot of these are not full. That's one of the things for them to more helpful. You should put the scissors in the clock here because we really need to know. These right now, they match from the participant handouts. The participants know if there's a handout, a video, or handout and videos, main things that the participants have. There's times in here, these are estimates. I might have been scared to talk about these. And then the learning goals. These learning experiences are put together. And there might be a quick note about the next module. For example, in module 6, you might invite participants to bring a photo of their environment to talk about when you get to module 7. So that's again just a quick reminder of the overview. You have this at your table while you're facilitating the module. You get off track. Let's see it. How does this look? Not laid out module. It says the learning experiences text, and it have the agenda, but it doesn't have the icons next to it. And the learning goals are there, and then note about the module that you might want to keep in mind. So that's how those look right now. Each learning experience is laid out, usually on 1 or 2 pages, almost better than a big 1 page. They're laid out the same way. They have those 3 things: central theme, learning goal, relate item, notes to remind you what things I'm going to do, the directions. There's going to be a few places, and when there's a box, that's something you want to jot something down ahead of time, or maybe take notes while you're facilitating. You might be thinking, well, that was a surprise for that came up during this module. A good place where you would keep that down. This is another mixed looks like right now, module 9 that you have with you. So there's none of those nice boxes. The 3 things in order: relate central theme, learning goal, and relate reflection. You probably can't quite tell that, but when you put them close, you're going to go, oh yeah, that's nice. But what you'll see, I'm going to I've run up the slide. Okay. There in module 9, it'll say like examples to share. That's where those boxes are going to be when it's laid out. And again, this is the teacher tools cover page. You see the scissors, and in module 9, teacher tools kind of laid out a little bit differently because I could not for the life of me figure out how to make this laid out in a side by side. That's going to have the central themes, the learning goals, and the notes for the next module. Your drafts, they might go to 2 pages. So I'm going to pause there for questions before we actually practice with these materials. How far? That's okay. Okay. Just want to make sure. Yeah. Okay. What questions do you have about the design and the layout from that fire hose? Corinne.
The So this, I know it's like this, correlating.
We are repeating the same images in the slides, yes. I would say, and the slides I would say are a great start. They've not been our highest priority. And I thought, again, coming back to economy, we'd like to get to a very consistent slide deck, and we'd like to what makes the most sense for you. Same things that we've always said, don't tell people what they are supposed to get. Use the slides in the same way to prompt ahas, to prompt reflection, to prompt thinking, and perhaps these symbols, put it back up there, like this is a big idea. This is a big idea of this module. I'll put it back up on this. Let's put this into our own words. What does this big idea mean to you?
I think it was like halfway through now.
Like, oh
Yeah, or like the simple correlated with. I feel like I need to go back through.
And that would be a great thing to tell us in that, use that form and say, here's what I would recommend in slide making. Because when we get to some, we get to where we want to be consistently, like every slide should have a slide that has a key card on it, for example. That correlation is not strong yet, I would say. Alicia, yes. Yes. That more than just what was here. Yes. Yeah. And so one of the things that we haven't written yet is the introduction to the manual. Danny has crafted some lovely language for it, but that's just the kind of thing that we want to have. Is remember, this is the we're going to use it like this, some guidance exactly. And so again, that's a great piece to say. It would really help me if that form is going to really help me if the introductions had a key to this map. What other questions do people have? Yeah, they are. This is a logistical design feature. We are grayscale in all the guts of everything because color printing costs more. So they are not color coded, but it's the kind of suggestion you can make for things that you post online. Other questions? Shelby. The very this one right here. Oh, I didn't have that one. Oh my gosh, I missed it. That's the, I call it the person heart. That's the professional. That's the caregiver. And we use that in module 16 to focus on, to tie everything up with this stuff only matters if you're supported and you need support to be able to do it, and you matter all by yourself as a person, as a professional. Questions? We should start reading. Thanks. Okay, what we're going to do is everybody should have their module 9 foundations. If you don't, I still have more copies of it back there. So if you didn't bring it with you, you picked one up this morning. It says module 9 foundation section text. And what we're going to do is, I give half an hour. We can give it 15 minutes to read the foundation. This is just what you would do when you're teaching. You read the foundation. I would encourage you, if you need in right to be able to focus and read, and get another cup of coffee for the classroom so that people who are ready to read right now read. There are sticky notes and markers and highlighters on your table. As you are thinking, I think something you want that valuable to say about, just think out loud about how you read the foundation.
It's going to be an opportunity to Now, I sat down and read all of the information for module 9 yesterday, and it took me maybe 5 minutes. You're not going to get it all done today, and that's okay. What we would like is for you to read through and just read through and take it all in. Highlight, circle, star, underline whatever's meaningful for you. For the study experience we're doing this morning, we'd like you to read through physical. But if you should, what we want to get used to, if we're going to read through, highlight what speaks to you, mark it in some way, and we will do a double dive. We're going to come back around. So don't feel like you have to catch all the things right now. This is like the warm up that we do with many of our first learning experiences module is let our brains to the information and see what speaks. And
Let's stay quiet so everyone. At 10:30. Any of you can take a break after your reading and be ready to go.
Hey Megan, hey Amber. Thanks for joining us. So I don't know if you just heard, but Lisa just told everyone to read. So they're reading the foundations. Sorry, I'm getting the lag on YouTube. 1 second. There we go. Sorry, I was getting the YouTube feedback. I was like, I'm talking to myself again now. So they're reading the foundations for module 9 right now. So Amber, you may be with kids, so do what works. But but if you guys want to, you're welcome to read the foundations for module 9. Megan, you may need that. Amber, maybe you need that too. I can show you where it is. I can send you the link. And then Leah and Lorene are going to kind of walk through one of the learning experiences in module 9 at 10:30. So we'll sort of read through, then everyone's going to take a break for 15 minutes, and then they'll do the learning experience. Okay, so I'll try to find the back. I know I have the foundation, but let me see if I can find some of the handouts that everyone is using as well. Okay, cool. I can send them the foundations. But do we have other things that I should send them over to Amber right now? Send them the foundation. Okay. Yeah. If you want, unless you're getting ready, you can just send them. Why don't I just send them the foundation right now? And then if we have time. Part of the foundation. Yeah, but okay. I'll see what I can. I also saw that you sent me all of them.
I did. I behind and trying to get the work together. But okay, I can do it.
Okay, I found the link for you ladies, so let me send it to you. No, and it's okay that you guys were unmuted because I had you both muted, so don't worry. Okay. There's that. So this is the whole draft of module 9. So you'll see the foundations in it, and then you'll see the learning experiences. And I'm gonna try to find the page numbers of the learning experience that they're gonna do. So let me try to figure that out. and I'll be right back. But for now, start looking at the foundations. Hey, Alicia, that's a chat.
Good morning.
Hi,
How are you
Um,
guys doing?
good. Let me send you what I just sent Amber and Megan.
No problem. Thank you.
Um, so right now we are reading the foundations from module 9.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna send you that. I'm actually gonna send you the whole document, which has the foundations and all the learning experiences in draft form for module 9.
Okay, I'll do that. Let me go hop on my computer because I'm using myself.
Perfect. So we're just gonna do that until like 10:30. And then we're
Okay.
gonna come back and we're going to look at page 23. And
Yeah.
Maureen and Leah are going to walk us through that learning experience and I'll show you the title.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just right now, take a few minutes if you can to look through the foundations, and then we'll then look at page 23 and Maureen and Leah are gonna walk through that.
That sounds good.
That's the plan. And I'm gonna pop this.
Thank you.
And then I'm doing my best to just like turn my computer so that folks are seeing and hearing. So you can always in the chat, if you're like, we can't hear, you can just put that in the chat and I can try to do my best to move it. Once everybody starts, I will mute you guys, so I won't be able to hear you. So just go through
That
the chat.
sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Thanks for coming on. I'm excited that you guys are here.
participants. I'm gonna hand this microphone over to Leah and Maureen, who have been critical key components of the most recent infant mother speech discrimination and are going to be your E20 instructors.
Stumble a lot of papers, as you know, with the new material.
All right. So we have a few different ways that we're going to do this today. For right now, before we jump into evening participants, we're going to walk through what is it like? How do we actually prepare for a learning experience? And when you registered for the statewide meeting, you said, I need to know about this. So we are going to be doing a learning experience in Module 9 that is regarding core knowledge, and probability. Anybody still feeling confused about that? Me too. Good news. So we're gonna practice. So let's take a look. If you go in your curriculum, sorry,
Yeah, go to your
Go to
curriculum
your
and find
curriculum.
out learning experience.
and find that learning experience. If you have numbered pages, it will be on page 23. Okay. So it's going to say relate learning experience. And then it's going to say what they didn't know and how they learn more. Core knowledge, responsive caregiving, and statistical learning. Okay.
If you just got handout
Oh, yes,
today,
thank you.
it's in, you got 2 packets and it'll have red text at the top that says new page section and I think might not have red text, but it's in the second packet. That's not the foundations packet.
So
It does have red text. That
Perfect.
section,
perfect, perfect. Okay, so if you have that and you see that, thumbs up. Fabulous. Okay, all right. So take a minute and read through this learning experience. Okay. So read through it as if you are planning and thinking about, gosh, I'm going to teach this. What do I need to know? Read through each of those steps. Highlight or underline things that you think might be important as you are planning.
And remember, at the top are the central themes, the learning goal, and the relate reflection. They're all jammed together now in that format, so you might want to just note those.
Okay, how are we feeling? Have you had a time to read through? Oh, okay. All right, I'm starting to see more eyes coming up. So we were asking to read page 23 and page 24, which is just this learning experience. And make note of things you need to know as a facilitator. Oh, can't hear us. Is that better? All right. Hope that's okay. Is that better? Yeah. You want louder still? Oh, okay. Excellent.
And we're curious, how many of you have already facilitated this? Okay,
All right, very good. Okay, so after looking through page 23 and page 24, who has an idea of what they need to know more of to be able to facilitate this? That's why we're going back to our foundations. Now, Jennifer, do you have a question or are you making a statement?
I have a question. Is there any kind of vocabulary word that could use? Yeah, I did not have very much, but there's four additional things that Sandy created for us for every module. One is a glossary, one is a list of extra resources with links. And there's something called what you need to know and something called this week, but that is the glossary is one of them. They're all online. Eventually they'll be beautifully printed.
Good question. So hopefully everybody heard, there is a glossary, there will be vocabulary, there are additional materials that are not fully done yet, but will be available. And depending on time later today, we'll get to look at those hopefully a little bit more. Okay, so this is where we're now going to go back to our foundations and read through our foundations again very intentionally and think, gosh, what information do I need to know for my foundation specific to this learning experience? So the sections you have, printed foundations again today for them, right?
That's what they were reading.
You were
Was-
reading? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So, okay,
so it starts on page 7, the bottom of 7, and then it goes through statistical learning. That's the bottom of page 11. So maybe you already made some notes, but if you need to browse that again and note anything, now would be a good time to do it. You don't have page numbers or the screen. There's not page. Okay, there's not page numbers. Yeah, actually, yeah. So,
You can walk around with that microphone.
have to pass the microphone back and forth, that's okay. So the first page where we're looking starts with, oh, and then I lost it. Infants and toddlers are ready to learn everything about their world.
Page quote at the top here.
Page 7. If you have a number one, it is page 7. And then we're going to go through statistical learning, which Louise says goes through the bottom of page 11. I remember in mine and it was page 12. So I'm really good with babies, maybe not so great at them. So we'll give you a couple minutes to just maybe jot some notes down in those things. And
Remember when you all went, oh, on the page where it says foundations and observations note catcher, that's where that open space would be. When you have your beautiful laid out module 9, there's going to be a box in the section that says foundations, discussions, and reminders. And when you're looking at the foundation, you'll make your notes right there. There's not a box there, but it says foundations note catcher. That's where you would put down notes that you're pulling in from the foundation.
You've got about a minute left. You have about a minute left to capture some thoughts. It's okay if you don't capture everything. All right, so we're gonna pause right here for a moment. And we're gonna talk about the different ways we take notes. Much like babies are individuals, we all have our own strategies and ways of doing this. I'm gonna let Lorraine talk about what she does.
So I would encourage you to read the new foundations. Even if it's a module you're very familiar with and it looks like the learning experiences haven't changed much, the foundations have, and they're so much richer than they were. And you probably already review it anyway before you teach them a facilitated module. Right? So these, I'm finding I have to read several times. So the first time I go and I'm on an underliner and I underline with pencil. Then the next time I read it, I had my highlight. Sometimes I'll start things. And then when I was getting ready for that learning experience, I actually took some notes. Because the note catcher was there, so I put it on another piece of paper. So you all have your way of doing it, and then some I had in the margin of the learning experience too. Leah has a great way too. So just really take the time to read that, and you know, even those modules that we facilitated for years, I would go back and like, oh, I never noticed that. You know, and it was good I did, because that night maybe somebody had a question about that, or I just thought it was new and fresh, right? So these new modules, foundations are exciting. There's so much rich information, things I'm learning as I read them. So I just encourage you to spend the time, watch the videos. Now those references are right at the bottom of the page. It's so easy to click on and go watch another video or read an article.
A new module, 3 hours at least. If I do every single step like this, Sarah? Right, Sarah's saying all day. Yes. So, that being said, there are funds available to help us in the mastering of this material. And mastering is not even the right word. It is the let's get to know it, let's get into it. And that's why we gave you 2 separate times to look, because you can't read through the foundations once and then bing, go out and be amazing. Lorraine and I were talking about our experiences doing this, and I watched my video and I was like, I told them all the wrong things. That was my second time facilitating it, right? And so it's a learning process, and the initiative understands that, and they want to support us in that. So keep track. Those funds aren't going to be there forever, but it is a time investment right now, especially for those of you who've been facilitating for years. It could sit down, read through that background, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes, look at all the things, and you're like, done, I'm ready. It is a big change, a really big change. And same thing, I'm reading through and I'm highlighting. And then I'm reading through again. And yeah,
And then Leah is a sticky note person.
I'm right. It's like my 3rd or 4th time through where I'm highlighting in a second color and underlining. All of my thoughts go into sticky notes. Eventually, all of it gets kind of organized like the names and either typed up or written down in a separate piece of paper, but I'm not even there yet. But I know there's so much I don't know. So that's what this is that this is hard. This is a lot of work that is different than maybe where we have been lately. And that's, we want you to know that. And it's so beautiful when you get in it. But the first thing you can do to set yourself up for success is to set aside enough time.
And some of the modules won't take long. Module 9, right? This whole section is new information for many of us, but some of the other ones, it's again that review, some new additional foundational information. So maybe it won't take. So we don't want to scare everybody away.
And have them ask me. I'm trying to balance it on a quarterly basis. We have enough money for your time, your counsel. If I need to encourage them more strongly, you can let me know if they need more encouragement.
This module,
That much. money.
Well, and this one, there's new videos and even though they're short, view them ahead of time. Some of them aren't as long as Sarah said, it won't take you as much. This one though, and probably module 6 takes a little bit longer as well. So, so you get, one nice thing is with a new format, you can kind of skim it and you can see which learning experiences are pretty similar to what we've done. So then that can help you plan your time to know how much, ahead of time you'll need to prepare.
so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pretend like we're planning together. That's powerful to see what that's like. And then we will jump into the learning experience and leading it for you as if you are participants.
So we're doing a whole. Everybody goes, "Oh." Hey, Leah, you ready for module 9? It's a lot of information. I know I was making notes. I read the videos a couple of times each. It's a lot, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I went through my coaching channel for module 9 and I saw some great stuff.
Yeah, that was helpful to go back and read in chapter 2, the module. So we kind of know who's doing which thing.
I think so. Yes, we've got a plan. We have a plan. So I was going to start with doing the core knowledge film and kind of facilitating that discussion around what have they seen and maybe even just letting them reflect on what information is new to them and just what they're still wondering about.
Great, and then for this purpose, we're splitting the learning experience. We don't usually do that, as you know, but because we're just doing less. And then we'll start with this statistical probability video, and then that sounds good.
Yeah.
And then we'll transition on to the next.
Okay, end scene. Okay, so there we are, right? We're dividing and conquering, and for the example of you getting to see a variety of facilitators, we're splitting the learning experience. That's different in every community. So you may flip-flop back and forth. You may pick things you enjoy. You may pick things you don't enjoy and say not it. And that's okay too. Whatever works for your team. Brittany, I saw your hand.
We'll get.
We will.
This was our pre-planning just among the co-facilitators.
Yeah,
Now we'll
yeah.
start on the slides, but we are not going to go through every learning.
No, we're gonna do the core knowledge and then we'll move into the statistical learning. Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, ask questions as we go. So we're just going to quickly go through like sort of how you would go through each one, right? So introduce, welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to explore early learning with module 9. So and you can use slides as much or as little as Lisa said, whatever you're comfortable with. So tonight we're going to look at our central themes for this module. Would someone like to read the first one? Thanks, Katie. So what does that really mean? What are you thinking about as you hear that central theme? Yeah, researchers are using technology to see how babies learn. She's familiar with the head cap to measure those electrical impulses, things like that, right? So research has come a long way. And now a lot of us knew, babies knew a lot, but now we're able to really document that and do research on it. So then we go through the other learning, the central themes, right? So depending how you do that in your community. And then the agenda. So today, you look at, and again, this is a place you're allowed to flip flop. If you want to start with your relate reflection before central themes, some communities do that, make that connection back to the previous module before introducing the new one. So you can do that whichever way you want. You just have to flip the slides when you get the slide deck. So tonight we are going to. I've been taught on this Saturday. So we're going to look at how researchers do some of that research and how they study what babies know. We'll watch a couple of short videos for that. And then we're going to look at core knowledge and responsive caregiving and statistical learning. Doesn't that sound like a lot? And I don't know, many of you may think of core knowledge. I remember that was a big thing with the schools, like going to curriculum core knowledge. This is a different core knowledge. So we'll look at what that means for babies, and don't get scared about statistics. We'll understand that in context of babies. Then we'll also look at what how you can create a responsive contingent learning and playing environment. So building on what we talked about in module 7, but now looking at with this idea of how infants and toddlers learn and providing those responsive experiences. And then we also know babies are learning to be a member of their family and culture. So we'll end our last learning experience around that. And then of course, we'll end our evening with our reflections. And throughout, of course, you can always go back and write things in there as we go through each learning experience. And then our evaluation. Any questions about our agenda or central themes?
Just like a real
Just
class.
like on this, and so then you would go through your, and a lot of the videos are now embedded in the slides, which is really helpful.
Sometimes that doesn't work, so we've been trying to put the link underneath also. I'm just so used to not having a microphone. Sometimes the embedding doesn't work. So we're trying to put the links in a couple different places. So we fast forwarded through our evening, and now we're going to talk about how babies tell us what they know. Okay. So if you turn in your responsive care journeys handout, book, journal, that's it. I'm working on my reframing. Yeah, so if you turn in your handout packet to page 68, you'll see that we have a video guide. We have watched many films this evening already. These films are a little bit different. So we're going to watch 2 longer films now. And I left my So what I want you to be looking at is on page 68, you will see that you have a box at the top. And that box at the top is telling you about core knowledge. And then it has a list of things on that left-hand side. And then there is a, on the right-hand side, where it's talking about statistical learning. It's got a list right. You'll notice that this handout is very similar to the other handouts we've already been using this semester. And we are going to have some time to do some reflecting, and reading. We understand that some of these topics feel new and scary because they sound really technical. We're going to watch these films tonight, and we do not expect you to be experts on this information. Mostly this is exciting new science that is telling us how capable babies are and allowing us to acknowledge and respect that capability and that competence. And the cool thing is that it's happening even earlier than we expect. So I'm going to play this film. I'd like you to jot down some notes on this handout. And we're going to have a discussion when we come back to it. Does anyone have any questions before we play this film? Okay.
No, click forward to the video. Which video? Oh.
There we go. Thank you for holding through technical difficulties. Also part of a real class. Hi, my name is Caroline. How are we for sound? Thumbs up for good. I'm a PhD studying developmental psychology at Stanford. I study social cognitive development, focusing on how young children and adults think about concepts like consciousness, functions, and personhood. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about a very influential idea in developmental psychology. That babies are born with what researchers call core knowledge. Some researchers think that infants mostly rely on all surface mechanisms for learning about the world. These mechanisms are domain general, meaning that they can be applied to everything from learning about the physical world, to understanding numbers, to figuring out social relationships. Other researchers think that infants are born with more domain-specific ways of making sense of their experience. They think that infants are born with a handful of distinct cognitive systems, reasoning about different parts of the world. This perspective is theory of core. On this theory, between minds and students, we define the six core knowledge systems, and each one is responsible for dealing with just small chunks of the world. Here's one well-studied example of a core knowledge system, the core object system. The core object system supports reasoning about objects, like rocks or strawberries or basketball, and the laws of physics that govern them. This system, like other core knowledge systems, is characterized by a handful of key principles, pieces of knowledge that guide reasoning in this domain. In the core object system, one of these key principles is the principle of cohesion. Objects should hold together across time and space, rather than disintegrating. Objects should also obey the principle of continuity. That is, they should move along continuous paths in time and space, rather than appearing and disappearing at random. Finally, there's the principle of contact. Objects should only start to move when something else touches them, and not without being touched. The reason we use three key principles, cohesion, continuity, and contact, are said to characterize the core object system is because studies have shown that infants expect objects to behave according to these principles and are surprised when objects violate them. Another important part of the core object system and other core knowledge systems is that it is characterized by signature limits, situations in which the system falls apart. Studies with both young infants and adults have demonstrated that the core object system can keep track of about 3 to 4 of these objects at a time, but not more. And it doesn't do well with things like piles of sand, liquids, or other substances, which violate the key principle of cohesion. This can lead to some pretty funny experimental findings, like young infants seeming not to notice when a single pile of sand goes behind a curtain and then has somehow turned into 2 separate piles of sand when the curtain is raised. So far, research indicates that there are about 5 or 6 of these core knowledge systems, each of which has its own set of key principles and signature limits. The core object system is one of the best studies, but there is also extensive research on the core number system, supporting reasoning about quantity and keeping track of how many things there are in some context. The core agent system, supporting reasoning about creatures that act autonomously to pursue their goals. The core place system, supporting navigation around the environment. And the core system for shape or form, supporting representation of the shapes of objects. Recently, some researchers have also speculated about a core knowledge system for social partners, supporting reasoning about social interactions and relationships. This is still an active area of research.
Core knowledge theorists argue that these core systems are innate, present at birth rather than learned over time, and that the systems are shared across many species rather than being unique to humans. Researchers have converged on these conclusions from a few different angles. Many researchers conduct studies with humans of different ages, including research with newborn infants, with older infants as they gain more experience with skills, with toddlers as they become fluent speakers of their language, with school children as they are explicitly instructed in arithmetic, geometry, manners, and other subjects, and with adults. Another research approach has been to compare performance across species, including not only humans, but also non-human primates, newly hatched chicks, zebrafish, and even ants. Finally, researchers sometimes compare performance across different cultural contexts that vary in the languages people use, the everyday environments that people experience, and the values and beliefs that people hold. For example, lots of research has compared people living in highly industrialized urban centers like San Francisco or Beijing to people living in isolated indigenous communities in rural Papua New Guinea or the Amazonian rainforest. Across many of these studies, participants of different ages, species, and cultural contexts have all shown similar sensitivity to the key principles and signature limits of each of the core knowledge systems, leading some researchers to argue that these systems are likely to be innate and species general. Other researchers disagree. It's important to note that the theory of core knowledge was not claimed to explain all of human cognition. Core knowledge theorists would not claim that there are an infinite number of core knowledge systems for all the different chunks of the world we might reason about or interact with, or that there are core knowledge systems for things like computers or astrophysics, which have no probable role in evolutionary history. Instead, researchers in this tradition view the small handful of core knowledge systems as fundamental building blocks, the course of learning and development, combined to help us reason about more and more complex concepts like computers, astrophysics, and science. For more on the topic of core knowledge, check out these papers. That's it. Thanks for watching.
All right. Go ahead and take a minute to jot down some thoughts after watching that film. Particularly, what do scientists think that babies already know? That's our respect question. I'll give you about a minute to jot down some ideas. You may ask a question. That is an excellent question, and we're going to put it in the parking lot, and we'll discuss it afterwards. This will take a learning experience. We can have an issue. What they're speaking of. Okay, so we've almost spent a minute. I want you to also maybe write a quick reaction to what you have while watching this. Remember again that when you are using your responsive care journey handbook, this is for you. This is not for us. And so these are notes you're writing yourself so that your future self can refer back to this and think, that's what I thought about that. Okay, so let's talk about what we heard and about this practical experience that you have in your work with babies, which again, in our EQ life is children from birth to 3.
How have you seen babies using these core knowledge strategies as they are learning about their world? What have you observed? Cheryl. Peekaboo. Yep, and the object permanence. I didn't see who said it. I heard you. Oh, thank you. Right. So yes, the peekaboo can be one of those great unifying things, all cultures, right? And children understand and are reassured every time we disappear and every time we come back. It feels good and they understand. Any other things you have us do? Jennifer? Cause and effect. Can you tell me more about that? Okay, so if I build something and I push it, it's going to fall down. And if it's made out of magma tiles, it's going to fall down really loud and with authority, right? And so that's something that I understood. This is an object. This is where they say physics, right? That feels overwhelming. Yes, please.
I observed, this was with a 2-year-old. My after work job was working at a bookstore, and he had this wall, and there were all these toys, and there were 3 matching Beanie Babies on top of the wall, and he was running around back and forth, and one of them fell off, and when he came to the other side, he stopped, and he stood there, and his mom was like, "Oh, for heaven's sakes," because he was about to have a fit. And I said, "Wait, he can tell the difference between 2 and 3. And the mom was like, "What? He can't count. He doesn't know." Because I think a lot of grown-ups think you have to teach kids to count, but I could see it in his face. I could see his face, and I could tell that what was confusing to him was there had been 3, and now there are only 2. So I could tell he could tell the difference between 2 and 3. Is that an example of one of these things?
Yes, absolutely that is. So that's using those numbers, right? Where that child saw 3, then he saw 2 and was like, whoa.
That is not
It
legit.
does not look legit, right? That is not. What a beautiful opportunity for you to partner with mom and make learning visible, like we talked about in module 8 in curriculum. We can say, he's learning about numbers. And she's like, great, I'm going to start flashcards tomorrow. We don't do flashcards with 2-year-olds because we know that they have an understanding of numbers. These concrete understanding that if we are close and careful observers, we can see them, we can sense of their world. Elena?
I was just thinking about the video that we had last time. Kids who were down, the water down, and down.
Being scientists, right? Oh, yes, all babies are scientists. And we have to do that, right? And my favorite example is lasagna hands at lunch on the wall, right? And my care teacher said I shouldn't put my hands on the wall with lasagna. I don't know if I could do it with a fear. Oh, okay, I shouldn't be doing that either. Where do I do it with my thumb? I mean, like, it's just a thumb. That's totally different. Maybe I'll try my hand. This one's got the extra tomato sauce. I'm gonna go like, oh, okay, all right. I guess I'm gonna keep filing those responses away because I am beginning to make sense of my world about what is acceptable and what isn't. So when we're thinking about how babies learn, Lisa shared a great example of that, learning within a relationship, right? Where have you seen babies learning in that context of a relationship? Some of these ideas. Jen, story time. Tell me more. Okay, great. So story time. I'll get you in a second, Cheryl, right? Where a child is in the lab and they are experiencing all of these things. And do children ever walk into our classroom or get carried into the classroom and think, you know what, I'm just going to focus on literacy today. I am going to work on some number and letter recognition.
right? For them, it is an entire learning experience within the context of the relationship with their caregiver. And someone who's holding them close, someone who's letting them be in control of turning the pages, someone who can feel their heartbeat as we talk about these pages or repeat that story again and again and again. So they're taking all of these things in and making sense of their world. Cheryl, we have time for you. Right. So that turn taking. Light bulb. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I push it back. And so again, that's in that context of relationships where you do something, I do something back. And that's also another way for children to recognize the power of themselves as competent, capable individuals. Right? Because if I do this at the ball, maybe somebody wants to talk to me too. And maybe my ideas are important. Brittany, we've got time for you. Yes. Yes, absolutely. That mutual gaze, and one of the great things about core knowledge is that babies who are even days old, they seek out faces or things that look like shapes that resemble a face because they want to feel connected. They are seeking that out. All right. So, Lorraine, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, those are great examples. And as you were talking, I also thought of that idea of this core knowledge of being that form and function and how important the relationship language is. And you mentioned story time and that relationship. And, you know, when you think about a cup and a bowl, right? They both hold things, but when you put that language that you do to that, it helps the child learn. You just learn that we have different functions. Right, the form is similar, but the function is different, and that's part of how that core knowledge is helped to develop with your, right, and then it also is supporting language development. But right, if we name those things, what you're doing, and that's sort of in return too, then it's really supporting your learning. So there's so much in core knowledge. I learned a lot. Thanks, Lee. So the other fascinating thing we now know about babies is that they have statistical probability. I have trouble saying the word, right? So we need to look at that. Does that sound kind of surprising to anybody? Maybe, yeah. I mean, again, you took statistics, you like held your breath to get through it. Maybe not all of you, right? Some of them easy. So we're going to watch a video, again, a short one, just showing us what that looks like for babies. And just a little idea of what statistical probability means. Anybody have a thought of like quick explanation of what that is before we see the video? Yes, Sarah. Right. So it's kind of measuring how likely something is exactly. So if you think about it, as you watch the video, be thinking, and if I asked you for examples for the core knowledge, think about what you notice babies do or how they demonstrate that they have. You ready for the video? For one. 5 months baby with not a mind. Our usual perch in the high chair provided her with a view of she knows what we're like to look these are patterns of action she has been repeated often. She understands what action should follow next. She understands these things almost like a mathematician and analyzes the situation through what researchers call statistical probability. 10-month-old Kyle is visiting the University of Oregon's Infant Studies Lab. Researchers well know that babies can keep track of patterns within the stream of motion that is there.
predict which action follows which. I was watching a researcher go through an unbroken sequence of motion elements that contain 4 predictable patterns of unusual actions. Each pattern has 3 motion elements to follow strict order. There's blow, feel, rattle, and insert, clink, scrub. These patterns are repeated often enough to create what researchers call statistical regularities. So while 10-month trial once you work with such complicated answers, you'll be able to track the patterns, develop expectations that certain actions should follow others. The familiarization phase goes on and on, until Kyle shows how to know. Then comes the test phase. First, Kyle is shown a group of 3 motion elements in a combination of as before. Kyle loses interest in this pattern because it has become too familiar. Then the researcher mixes up the pattern of motion elements. She does blow, clink, stack. Although Kyle has seen the individual elements before, he has not seen it in this particular order. He's all attention. From Kyle's reaction, researchers conclude that he has recognized that there are predictable patterns. And when there is a change in the pattern, Kyle shows surprise. 3 research results are showing that babies who pay substantial attention to the original patterns do show greater interest in the mixed up test sequence. In the world at large, the movements of daily life present themselves in a myriad of forms. How does the baby extract meaning from these patterns? Psychologists are just beginning to discover what details of human action babies are paying attention to in the first 2 years of life and their amazing ability to interpret.
Any surprises or is it just, what we expected to see? Okay. Wondering how facial expressions build into the patterns. Is the baby watching her face because she has a certain expression? That was curious.
I think you're onto something there. I think, with research and some of the other videos we saw, you could see the facial expressions were very scripted. So I think there is something there. What do we know? What are they watching? Probably all of it, right? We know they, right? We say they're taking everything in. So, right. So I think, yeah, they learn to expect maybe a certain expression, or with an expression, something's going to happen. Yeah. So they're always watching, right? We say that. So yeah. Maybe you have a research study. When they were young too, psychology research at Steve Boulder. And I remember thinking it was odd because it's similar to this. I can tell like it's very scripted, their actions, their face, how they say it, so that it's the same. So every child, right, experiencing it. Because otherwise the research, it's not research, and it's just kind of playing with children, right? Looking at our researcher factors, right? But it has to be all those things consistent with research. That is fascinating. So when we think about that as we interact and we're responsive, right? It's our whole being that's being responsive. Our words, our actions, right? The facial expressions, your body language is almost conveying more than your the connection there for responsiveness. So how do babies and toddlers you work with show you that they are understanding patterns, noticing and expecting things to happen based on patterns? or noticing when the pattern is violated, change. All kinds of things. OSHA.
Like if you have a schedule in your class, and you're reading a book, you always know, after we read this, in this area, we go to the. It's you can see some of those things.
Yeah. Did everybody hear it? Did everybody hear it? That after story time is eating, and so when the book comes out, they know they're gonna eat, when it's done, they fall. What else? What other things? Susan? Language. So that babies will, learn. Out there first. And then if it changes, they can still learn. Expand that time. Past 10 months where they can necessarily. Everybody hear Susan? Language. Patterns in language, and Hat Cool has done a lot of work around that. And there was an example actually in our foundations. You know, like the example for a baby, that the B, that sound usually comes after they and not the other way around. And so they'll learn the patterns of their language. That's what we're learning. How can we work? That's the important.
Babbling in Arabic versus babbling English. Like the sort of, is there a feel that's like, that's from my language, that's not from, or someone who speaks Spanish, or can you tell when a baby is babbling?
And then so,
Yes, when they're taking statistics, that's what I'm saying, that we can kind of be like, you have been exposed to this language. You've taken statistics on the difference between the O and the and we have that in English, but we don't have it in Japanese. So that baby's like, I can't hear any difference. Because we don't have it, the same sound in our language. Start to say, no, that's not a difference. Yeah. Because they've taken all these statistics on it. They hear me from habits too.
right. Yeah, right, exactly. And that's why we even said it's a predictable routine, right? They like that because it is, it's what we're talking about here, this statistical ideas that it's predictable, they can count on it happening. You know, other examples, right, might be what, when they see the sleep cell come out, what does that mean? It's time for sleeping, right? Things like that. So those routines and those patterns, language, so again, talking to babies is so important because they're starting to understand and expect those patterns. Any other thoughts on this concept? Yeah.
I love that you make those connections about the importance of routine, because we talked about that in module 6 when we were thinking about being resilient. And our routines and that consistency that you are providing every day for the young children is helping them to be resilient, helping them to build their things.
Yeah, and they expect your responsive relationship too. So, right, that's your goal. So they count on that. And that's why some of them don't have to cry so hard because they know you're going to get the problem. Right? They can predict They know that's, they can count on that likelihood of that happening. So here's a chance for you to go to page 71 and jot down anything you want to remember about the core knowledge or statistical probability that you want to think about this week when you're topics. Okay, so you'll give your participants a couple minutes to do that. So now that we've learned about this and watched the videos, as Lena said earlier, it's not so that we become experts on this because there's so much research out there, but it's so that we can respect, right, observe babies, and then reflect with that wonder, like think about what they're doing. And now that you're familiar with core knowledge and statistical probability, that you can really look at it a little differently, like what are they doing here? What are they trying as they reach for that ball or they push something to see that it moves only when you touch it, right? And then so that you can relate by providing those responsive learning experiences to each individual baby you're with throughout the day, right? So that's why we're doing this, not so that you become experts, but so you can really look with a different view of, wow, this is pretty amazing what they're doing, and researchers have proven all that babies know, and now we get to see it. You're privileged that you get to see this live in front of your face. So we'll move on to our next learning experience. So then, you go through your other learning experiences and then always come back to your relate reflections. So then you have your group turn to that page 70 and 71 in their journey book. Journey handbook. And then also review the central themes to look, did we cover these tonight? Were these some of the key ideas you took away? So we can spend a moment on that. And then the important part is giving them that time, as you're all doing probably, to reflect and fill in some things on, in this case, page 71, and then come back and share. And depending on the time, and I'm sure you do this in different ways, the whole group share, or sometimes we do 2 breakout groups. One facilitator goes to each group, and then people share that way. But it's so important for that transfer of learning. Because we could talk about this, but when they can actually write down some ideas for the week and then share them, right? If we write something and say it to somebody else, I know for me, I'm more likely to do it then. How about you? Whereas if we just say, oh, here, get your booklet on the way out, like you used to do. So here we're really encouraging that reflection and then coming back the next week and spending time in the beginning. What did you do? What did you notice this week? What did you wish you had done? Those kind of things. That makes sense? Yep.
So there are many ways, and you'll notice that you have that option in your curriculum. We're talking to you as facilitators right now for you to make a plan about what that relate piece will look like. You'll also notice that in the agendas, even at the front of each module, it gives you an example of time, and you should be setting aside at least 20 minutes for relate reflections to happen, so that you have that time to really look through all of those items on the first page of your relate reflections. And then additionally, you have that time for each participant to really write down and think about and add to, if they made notes earlier in the module, about what they're hoping to see moving forward. And when you do that, then you also want to give them plenty of time to talk, whether it's a large group, whether 2 breakout groups, we do pairs, right? But they need to talk and we need to come back and you always, always, always start the next module reading that up. And someday, when we have all of the foundations handled and we've got this, you also have a spot as a facilitator that when people are starting each module and reflecting back on the previous module, for you to have a note catcher to write down the things you're hearing, which some of us already do intuitively, but this is going to be meaningful when we get to 16, because we want to be able to say, hey, remember when we were in module 3, you talked about how you are a mirror to them, and that when you smile, that you smile. That is going to help them make these connections and understand how much they've grown and they've changed throughout. And so we want to be using these things in the curriculum. That's why it's designed the way it is, so that we have places to write these things down and to be able to help connect back and wire those things in our participants' brains the same way we talk about in module 1, where we're having those repeated positive experiences.
I think that sharing, sometimes people don't come up with something like, right, they don't know what they want to try to speak, but then if I hear Alicia shares, oh, I could try that. So that sharing is really important.
What do you do with participants?
Every single child was once a baby. Every single child. They can still, there is something relevant for everyone. I mean, language, if we're supporting language, if we're exploring early learning, we can talk about stuff. We can talk about other things depending on where each child is. But eventually, we'll all be able to register our students in PBIS and they can only be with us for working with babies. So there is hope. Someday. I see your hand way in the back, Shelby. If they do not have hands-on babies that are not their own babies, we cannot provide coaching at this time.
And I would just clarify too that particularly for family child care providers, please coach them. They're going to have a baby at some time. If they gets a little stretched and say, if you have one child who has not yet become exactly 36 months old, who's definitely serving an infant or a toddler, but we know that the homes are going to serve a baby at some time. But I don't want you all spread into preschool classrooms where there's already a lot of other funding and support. I know it's not as good as what you are providing. That's a different problem. But we're not getting to all the babies yet, so I'd like you to focus your time on where babies are or are likely to, very likely to be. They're not likely, although let's be honest, babies are likely to be dropped in the preschool room when there's nobody here in the infant room right now. But babies are very likely to be in a family child care home and an FFN provider's care setting, to be with a nanny again in the near future, much more likely than they are to be in a classroom that is designated as the pre-K classroom.
Okay. All right, Brittany, I see your hand. We're going to come back to our parking lot and you too, Cheryl. We don't. Oh, so that's a great question, Brittany. When we're thinking about foundations, to those of you who have experienced facilitators, what are the foundations? How does that guide the learning experiences you facilitate? Okay. So Sarah's saying the foundation is for you as the instructor to feel secure and knowledgeable about this topic. So maybe you might highlight some things or you might take some notes. For example, the note about the mutual gaze and the babies sharing and looking at 3 dots. That was something in my foundation, but I added that later to support your comments.
And Brittany, I might, I don't read, but like this module has a lot of new things. So I might have my sheet right next to me. So I'm not reading from it, but as somebody says something, or I think of, oh, we didn't, connect like I was saying, the language with the form and function, then you have it, but you don't necessarily. That makes sense.
And
so you refer to it.
yeah,
But
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity for metacognition for you to say, you know, that's something I just learned about. So I'm going to look back at the note that I had. That's right. It said they did this test on children 18 to 24 months, and they kind of bringing in something very specific when someone's like, I disagree. I think you're wrong. You know, when you have it in your heart, but you could go and say, well, that is new to me. Let me go check. Because that's a kind of respect, reflect, relate behavior we want to see caregivers do. That is new to me. I want to go check back in it. And I have this resource. That's a great example though. So when I planted myself, right? I was like, when I saw this baby knock off one thing, if nobody has an example, right? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I think this comes to Claudia. I think this comes to Claudia's question as well, because you might decide that video is too intense for my people, right? And you might say, you might pick one of the easier ones, like number, and say what scientists are learning, and you might use some of that language, right? You might use it. What scientists are learning is that babies, they sort of can count, and then you might pause right there and say, has anyone ever seen a baby like tell the difference between 2 and 3? A very young baby, like maybe the example of a pacifier. I am very knowledgeable about where all of my pacifiers are, and what is missing, I am going to be worried about it, right? And I'm going to notice. I'm going to be able to sort of count them because I'm paying attention to them as an object. You kind of build the story together. This is for everybody who's coming tomorrow. We're going to be an experience being facilitated by the instructor, and that's what you're going to do. But Ellen was, when you said I did it wrong, Ellen was shaking her head. Nothing you're doing is wrong. If what's most supportive for you is to be like, I actually, this is totally new to me, and I need to be able to read this. Okay, the difference between form and the like objects or whole. Pacifier is a great example. Because as we get a little bit older, we're like, no, I want the one with the panda bear on it. And I'm not saying that out loud, but my eyes are saying, I know what that whole object is. My brain knows that objects come in a whole. It's not, you know, yes, Skinner and behaviorism would have said, yeah, the baby just knows what's in their mouth. They just are feeling that sucking. They don't care what it looks like. They don't know anything. But now we know statistically, babies are like, every time I see the panda, I feel better. Every time I see the panda one. Sometimes I get something else and I feel sort of better, but it's not the panda one. There's this little rubby thing on the side of the nipple and I hate it. I don't feel, they're taking statistics on all those things, right? We can build this in, and it is going to take a while to get comfortable weaving new information in, right? So I don't want you to take and read to them because they're not going to get it either, right? But if you only cover number, right? You only cover babies, it's in them. They have this core knowledge, and learning made such a great point. A lot of us have heard that core knowledge or core curriculum, whatever government thing. That's not what we're talking about. Core, that's what it is. But if you can get the idea that babies are so brilliant, they already have these, like a jackknife. And now I can't even remember what the jackknife is like. Yes, it is a jackknife. It's not a jackknife. Forget the jackknife. Yeah. But they all have these tools built into them, things they already know. And what they don't already know, they're actively taking statistics on it. You have those two big ideas, so it might come up in language, right? But it might not come up in language. People might not be ready for that. You might come back to it. Thea did such a lovely job of going back to module 8 and module 6 and kind of pulling things back and forth, right? That taking statistics results in a sense of predictability. And predictability is something we talk about, like from the experience of the child. I can predict things, but why? Because my baby brain is taking statistics. Otherwise, I go through the world being like, what's this door handle? Never. Another funny experience. My son walked and pulled the door handle off. I just went out the door and pulled the door handle off. And he just stood there. How am I going to get out the door? Open the door, and he's like. The world should be predictable, but we don't actually, and this is something the scientists don't know, this is the other really awesome point that Larry, I think, made at the beginning too, is scientists are learning, they're learning, we're all learning. So it's okay if you only focus on one. And that's why we go back to those big overarching. Folks did this really well as well, kind of talking about remember, it's about responsiveness, it's about reflect, relate. So if you just want to feel comfortable with talking about how babies already do know about number, how do we build on that next? And weaving it into that next learning experience with the contingent toys, Jennifer did a lovely job of bringing in everything from the Piaget movie because she's got that in her, right? Because she taught EQIT, I don't know how long it's for, long time. So she could like and scene and be the Piaget movie and talk about object permanence, cause and effect, which were things that we could see about babies before we could see inside of their brains. And we've become more sophisticated in our tests. They're also still true. And as you facilitate that next learning experience with the toys and materials, and how could they show us with these materials, or how could we observe that they already know the difference between 2 and 3, and that they don't know the difference between a pile of jelly and a pile of jelly, or sand, or whatever. So you can keep weaving that information in. You might only talk about number in this learning experience, and in the next one, when who gave the example of knocking the tower down? When you knock the tower down, when you knock the tower down, yes, it's called an effect, but it's also the baby is knocking the tower down with their finger because they already know that when I touch things, I can make them right. That's innate. They already know. And so you might be bringing that in the next learning experience, even though you didn't address it in this one. It's okay if you don't get everything, because if they get something that you're comfortable with and the participants can take away, that's way better than what I'm doing right now, talking very fast with a lot of information. I love this stuff. Which is totally what you would, it's totally natural, right? Because we're like, oh my God, this is so interesting. And they could know so much about babies. But one thing is good too.
Yes. I think it helps you be responsive to participants. And that I would say the spaciousness, because the first couple modules, like there's so much time. What are we going to do with all the time? But as they become more comfortable talking, sharing, asking questions like this went to the language because that's what came out. And then we spent a little more time asking people about language. Right? So it gives that space for that, and then you go back and something like you wanted to share, you can share it later when you have time left. So you're modeling that response.
I think I was going to say, written the point, it's some, I want to know if there's that's what I read. Or whatever.
Absolutely, Sarah. That is not always, we are not all knowing. We are all human here. And my values were like, yeah, we're revising. This one nice stuff. But if you like that, and if that's trying to use information, I don't know the answer. I'm gonna look it up. And to see that from us, right? It's that parallel process. Right? We are observing babies in their spaces, they're observing their babies, and when they see their babies want something else, they go find that something else and they put it in their space. And when we are hearing from our participants that they want more, and we don't have that, we say, well, hey, I know how to get a hold of Lisa, and I know where the resources are, and we can see what information we can give you. And it is so powerful to do that and to be human in front of them. Because they need that reassurance.
Claudia, did we answer, did that discussion kind of help with your question?
Yeah, I don't want to assume that they.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have a response to that?
And like. So I don't
Right, right. Yeah. Right, so those are some strategies where you take those pieces, especially if you've been facilitating already, and you say, this is important to me, and I didn't see it in this learning experience. So maybe you do give a little bit of information. However, I'm going to throw in a caveat, since this is something Lorraine and I discussed earlier today, is we don't want to explain exactly what's going to happen, right? We want it to be this fine line, so we're not telling them, you're going to learn this. We want to give enough information to pique their interest and then allow them through the discussions that we're having, or the films we're watching, to make those connections. Sarah, so you're not, yeah. Yeah. And it's always helpful to have your own examples, right? So that's written into your curriculum. What is an example of this? What is an example of that? That's part of why we do that here, because it's new to all of us. So that you can watch this video later and be like, I'm writing down everything she said. Yeah, because she had all the things. And so we can be these, so we can be the point. And we can say, oh, I saw this happen on the site. Or I experienced this. I lost my other train.
Well, I wanted to, some of the, so it was lovely. When Leah was pretending to wipe the lasagna on the wall, look back at the directions. Where is that in the directions? Do you see where she wrote that for herself? In which number is it? Where you, I bet you know that.
We did that off.
Because it asks, in number 4, babies use core knowledge to test out and learn about the world. And in number 5, time 15 of baby learning of things to share. Those are exactly the kind of examples where you might just write down, I'm going to talk about testing with my grown-up relationship with the world. And I thought I was going to come here and she was going to say, we talk about the spaghetti. So evenly woven in. And that's when you have those final modules that have the space in them, it'll be much more clear. I'm sorry about that. But those are just the kind of stories, and you might be gathering them from the participants to tell next time so that you have them at your fingertips.
I would say that's been the biggest challenge for me with the revisions, as I came in with a whole book of examples for the previous curriculum. And I was like, oh, I'm going to say this here, for Heather's stories, decades later. But it's moving. And so I find myself with this revision, and because it's been teaching it a couple times, so I get to harvest and I flow with those things. That was good. Thank you, Lisa. That's why this time together is important. That's why office hours are important, because we can crowdsource and whatever that is, right? We can all share and learn from one another, and that's going to make this experience. Sarah? Okay, now what happened? Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh, yes. My first cohort was like, okay. My second cohort, before we even got here, they were like, oh, I just realized why it's so important that we have routines. Because they can expect that routines are gonna happen. And I was like, yes. And so it will depend on the cohort, absolutely. And it also depends on our material. Yes, so the stories come, and that's when the learning happens, right? My favorite thing I ever learned at a statewide meeting is I'm not the one who should be doing all the talking. My participants. And that's the beauty of the revisions in this curriculum, is there is time and space for those conversations to happen and to create that community, and for us to place that emphasis on the relate reflections, because that tells them what you are thinking and what you are wondering and what you are celebrating is important. And that's what invites them to join us in class and share their examples and then take that forward into their work.
I think some of the previous curriculum didn't do it as much as some other curriculums, and they work with words, say this now, do this now. That's not, and I think, while we first looked at it, went, now I think the beauty of it is that, again, the foundation is for us to learn and be a little bit knowledgeable. Again, not experts on those topics, but then to be able to then lead those learning experiences, facilitate them. We're not teaching. And that shift, if you think about yourself as a facilitator rather than a teacher, because you're facilitating their learning. And so as Leah just said, letting them share what they know, what their questions are, what are they thinking about, which child am I thinking about now that this really applies to, or I want to go back and observe more. Right, so you sort of, it does put a little more on us to be prepared, but at the same time, I'm finding it exciting because after I was in cohort 1, so I've been with this for a long time. Change, right? So I think we all the learners. That's what it's about, modeling that. Again, you said too, when ours like this is new, so in the feedback, let us know how it really was, and they've been honest, like that was clear, we didn't get it. For some of them, and then we can share that with Eva. So I think be real, be who you are. And again, we're here to learn together, right? We're modeling that we're facilitating, not experts teaching you, we're learning together. Because I learned as much from them sometimes, right? As the foundation.
And all goes back to respect the flexibility. How we bring that together. I think, lost my train of thought. How about we wrap things up?
Do you have any other questions, like have the experts here? Honest and humble and expert facilitators here, just kind of might encourage you to go into lunch thinking about taking this time at the time to talk about it with others. I would ask maybe again for everyone who has facilitated all or part of the curriculum already, the new experiences, to raise your hand. So as you're going to lunch, you might say, I do have a question I want to pick your brain about. If you're pick your brain, or those of you who are working, they can't see your face. They don't Any one of you could be up here. Any one of you could be up here facilitating this, and it is going to be different every single time because of the participants you have. And this is a difficult and challenging and rich, dense module, and that's why it's not module 1. Yes, early brain development is also dense and involved, but again, we're always looking for one central theme, one big takeaway, one thing you can do different. Even if it's just pausing for 1 second, it's just for reiterating that respect, reflect, relate cycles. And remember, it's pausing because that's laying the foundation for realizing babies already know a lot of stuff. When we can go back to saying, remember when you paused, it was because you wait and see what does the baby already know? What does the baby already want to do? What I wanted to do when I was the baby. Those things over time become statistical. We even as adults are using that, right? They're beginning to trust you that you're going to make space for them, bring their ideas in because you've been doing it over and over, even if these ideas are really challenging, stretching your brain. Katie, we have a question before we break for lunch.
I'm teaching on right? And I think a consistent reflection I have from participants has been looking at handbook and asking where's that information.
Ooh, that's a nice food for thought, isn't it? Yes. Had we had a little more time right now, one of the things that, so I mentioned we got 4 additional things in the revision. One of those is this week, and it's a 1-pager meant to be printed out and handed to parents. So that answers the question, how do I share this with other people? Which is not the question you just asked. The next one is what you need to know. So Sandy wrote an extra in-depth topic for every module called What You Need to Know. And they're 3 to 5 pages long. They're translated into Spanish and Arabic already, but just in a word, you could have they're online and you can have them and share them. So the third thing is a glossary, which Jennifer asked about. The fourth thing is a list of additional resources that includes things like self-paced online courses that are related to this topic. Because what we want everyone in EQIT to walk away with is at least one thing that you're going to do different this week as a result of being here. And we're not in charge of deciding what that one thing is for that person, but for the people who are like, but I want more. I want to know more. I want to know where this came from. You can also share the foundations afterwards. I don't want you reading them verbatim during the class. I don't want you giving them out ahead of time, but it's not secret. They could, yeah, the four things are definitely useful for both of you, and they're not necessary or required. I think of the This Week document really similar to the Relate, the way the Relate came into the curriculum later. I expect in 5 years it'll be embedded deeply, but we're done with it enough to embed it right now. So all of those things are possible. Send people to college if they want to know more. It's out there. Tell them to read Donna and Sandy's book. We don't want to keep anything a secret from anybody. They certainly can give more. And this is a beginning class for in-service professionals. Beginning. It's meant for everybody to be able to go from where they are to their next step. I repeat Sue again. Just meet people where they are and provide them what they need. So, yeah. And if you knew what the rest of my Google Drive looks like the inside of my head, all of the things that you could ever want about infants and toddlers are collected in 194 places. I could make it accessible to you if you'd like to wander around. So after lunch, we're going to experience one more learning experience from Module 6. We're going to kind of do what they have done here, but I'm not going to give you a lot of time to read the whole foundation. We're just going to do one little section. We're going to look at the learning experience direction quickly, and then I'm going to facilitate it. And then we're going to move into a coaching World Cafe. So during lunch, so here's what I would say. When we do the World Cafe, and if you move around, I'm going to give you a break after that Module 6 learning experience. And at that time, I'm just giving you some predictable what's coming next. At that time, you might put all your things away and put them in your bag so that you'll be more comfortable moving around the tables, but not now. Lunch, have lunch, leave things as they are. We'll start back at 1 o'clock with that new learning experience, except for those of you who, and we're recording, so we'll figure out a way to also record that. You have to take your, we'll get that part recorded as well. after lunch. So it's noon, please have some lunch, please go outside, please come back at 1 o'clock. Thank you. What it looks like to get done.
Felicia, I'm going to close now. Since we're breaking for lunch, and then we'll have to reset up. I have to go do a different training, and so we'll reset up the video with someone else's computer.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining.